is really manufacturing lean, green belt, Six Sigma for the last really 20 some years. I've been instituting lean in manufacturing environments. Uh, a little bit about ERA up front. Founded in 1977. We're located in Golden, Colorado. Here's some pictures of our facility, our lab, where we manufacture and analyze a lot of our products that we produce. All our products we produce. We just moved into it's really a 65,000 square foot facility, 25,000 of which is the lab. Okay. As most of you already know, we have our PT products: wastewater, drinking water, soils, air emissions, micro, radiochemistry, custom standards, bulk reagent standards, and our accreditations are listed there. PTs, QCs, we also do customs and TOC standards as well. So let's get started on 5S. This first slide is really what I call the house of lean. You know, I think we did a webinar a little while ago about kind of a higher level overview of what lean's all about. But really from the foundation standpoint, and what the purpose of this webinar is kind of give you an overview of the foundational pieces of lean. And one of them is the 5S system. You know, and that's kind of the basis of really getting yourself started. And this presentation will go into those 5S's. What is the 5S system? And let's get started really in regards to lean is really all about reducing waste. Waste in your processes, waste in your inventory, waste in your motion. And these are 7 really levels of waste that you're really looking for. Overproduction, that's where you produce more than what you need. Inventory, carrying inventory adds cost to your business. Motion, anytime you have to move to go get something, those types of things is a waste. Waiting on something. Errors, obviously it's quality rated. If you make errors, you're going to have to redo, rework, those types of things. Transportation is a waste. And then also space. Many times you go into different facilities, different manufacturing environments, and they have a lot of space, but they're not utilizing that space effectively, and it does cost money for that space. So again, these are the seven wastes that you really focus on in a lean process. You know, from a vision of work organization, really this is what 5S is all about. It's about work organization. And if you look at what the philosophy of lean is really focused on, is reducing those wastes. What you're doing is eliminating the non-value added activities. You're going to focus on what those root causes are, just not the symptoms. And then, lean 5S all provides a structure to sustain the system. From a work organization, you're looking to reduce wandering, searching, waiting, delays, secrets, obstacles, detours, extras, injuries, waste, and red ink. Those types of things is what you're looking for. Ultimately, what you're trying to do is set up where what is supposed to happen does happen on time, every time, day or night. So what is 5S? It stands for sort, set in order, shine, standardize, and sustain. And beside that is the Japanese terms for those 5S's. We're going to go through each one of these five S's and go into a little bit more detail in the process. But basically 5S is a systematic method to organize, order, clean, and standardize the workplace, and then keep it that way. So if we think about sort, basically sort is going into your work environment. And again, this works in any environment. It could be your office, it could be your cubicle, it could be the lab, it could be your instrument area, it could be where your work area is and where you're doing your work every day. But what you're looking at is you're removing items from that workplace that are not needed, either for the current production or it's just not needed. Many times we get caught into, I'm just going to keep this because it's just in case. And we'll go into a little more detail about that and further on. But sort is really going through, and it's no different than in your house. I look at it as your house of, making sure that if you don't need it, get rid of it, because all it's doing is taking up space, and there's really no benefit in maintaining and keeping it there. If we look at set in order, this is probably one of the most critical pieces of the 5S. They're all critical, but this is the one where you can actually gain and reduce non-value added and reduce some of your waste. And that's where you're arranging what you need to do your job is as close as possible. It's easy to use and you can find it every time. You're going to set stuff, label items so that they're easy to find and put away. So again, it's identifying what do you need to get your job done, having those tools, those resources, those materials, whatever it may be, as close as hand as possible, and then making sure that they're labeled properly and you know where to put them when you're done, so that you always know. And if somebody's using your area or using your office or using your cubicle, they know where to put things back when they're done using them. The shine, and this is where a lot of people, get confused when they hear 5S. They think it's all about, keeping the area clean and shining. And so it is. It does. Shine is related to keeping your area clean, but it's also the developing the skill set that as you're cleaning your area, you're looking for abnormalities. If you're cleaning your instrument, your HPLC or whatever, as you clean things, you're looking for possible issues that could, put that instrument down. Leaks, oil leaks, some type of air leak, any type of thing like that you're looking for as you're cleaning. But basically, you keep it organized, you keep it clean, and it stays that way. And that's basically what Standardize is. It's basically you're doing those first three steps. You're maintaining them, that you're sorting unnecessary items out of your area. You're making sure that what you need on a regular basis is close at hand and it's labeled properly, and you're keeping your area, your office area, whatever work environment you're in, as clean as possible. And then the last 5S is the most difficult of all, and that is sustain. And that's where you're trying to make a habit of properly maintaining the correct systems and these procedures. You're making sure it's being sustained, and we'll go into more detail in each one of these 5S's. But this is the most difficult. This is the one that you get the first three S's going, and if you don't standardize it, it's going to be hard to sustain it going down the road. I can tell you, we've been doing 5S at ERA for 4 years, and it's to the point of, I'm not going to say it's self-sustaining, but it really is self-sustaining itself at this point in time. So let's talk about sort. Okay, my philosophy is right at the top there is, when in doubt, move it out, right? So if you think of sort, by getting the unnecessary items out of your work area, it starts reducing problems and annoyance in your flow. It helps improve your communications amongst associates and fellow workers, and it actually does increase the quality of the product, or the quality of whatever productivity that you're trying to enhance, by getting rid of basically all this junk and organizing it. All right. Typically, when you sort something, you're looking at your work environment, whether it's at a workstation, at your lab bench, whatever. And what you're doing is you're looking at it and saying, what do I use on a daily basis? I need to have that at hand, and I need to have it close at hand. Then I'm looking at categorizing, okay, what's the stuff that I use maybe once a week, twice a week? I need to have close by, but I don't need to have it right at my workstation. And then if it's something that, I use monthly, or you use monthly, that's something, again, you want to store outside your work area, because, again, it's taking up valuable space within your workstation. And then if it's not needed at all, it's just nice to have, you could place it what we call a red tag area. It doesn't necessarily have to be red tag area, but you place it in an area where it's basically saying, I don't need this, but maybe somebody else can use it. You put a time frame on how long it's going to sit there. As you look at sort, you just don't want to look at you know, your workstation. You want to look at where people tend to put clutter. All right, and that's in rooms or areas not designated for any particular purpose. And that happens. It's human nature. It happens in your house. It happens everywhere, where you have something, you don't want to get rid of it, and you'll find a space for it. You're looking at corners, you're looking at exits, entrances, under cabinets, under counters, under desks, on shelves, near the bottom of tall stacks of items, storage areas that are not clearly sorted or owned by anybody. And there's a picture here that represents part of our warehouse. And as you can see, before we started 5S, this is what it looked like. It was pretty much, we just shoved everything where it needs to be. Nobody really owned this area. And obviously we took care of it in our sort process of what do we need, what don't we need. Again, some other examples of where stuff accumulates. Again, this is all representation of our ERA environment. Again, we're looking at warehouses, we're looking at cabinets, so just stuff shoved in, drawers, workbenches, and you can see there's just stuff all over the place. And what happens is, it makes it very difficult that if you're going to look for something It's very hard to find because now you're digging through stuff and you're basically, it's a waste. It's a waste of searching. You're wandering, you're searching, and you're looking. So again, what you're trying to do is sort the stuff that you don't need, get it out, uh, and then we'll talk about moving on to set and order. So when we talk about set and order, it's basically a place for everything and everything in its place. We talk about that on a regular basis here. Everybody pretty much knows that there's a place for everything and everything's in its place. So once you identify what you need in your work area or anywhere in your warehouse or whatever, you want to identify where that's supposed to be kept and label it accordingly. You want to determine where the location is going to be, and you're going to identify those needed items, right? Then you start looking at 5S is, when you fully implement 5S, the second bullet there is also other tools like Kanbans and those types of things is, all right, if I need to have vials or ampules, how many do I need to have in my workspace? And at what point do I need to replenish that? All right, so you do that, again, by setting an order is how much of each item do I need to store in my work environment? And I want to set that height and the size limits. So if you look at an example of one of our lab cabinets, we've identified in the shelf of what are those things, so somebody can quickly find them. In addition, behind those is when I hit this certain point, I need to replenish, so that there's always stock on hand to do that. The whole purpose of the visualization and marking these things is to be able to tell what's normal versus what's abnormal. And again, by labeling this, I know a lot of people will think, wow, it's just a lot of extra work. I can tell you, since we've implemented this, we've actually gained efficiency in our processes. Everybody knows where everything is. Everybody knows when it needs to be replenished. I can tell you 5 years ago, there was times where we ran out of stuff, and how can we be running out of vials? We should know. So we implemented, again, 5S, we implemented visualization, and we implemented Kanban systems so that we never run out of materials that we need. When we talk about, we want to indicate the locations where these things are. We want to use signboards. We want to use lines. We want to use location lines, labels. Again, we want to set the limits. How high, or what's the height line? And I have an example of a picture from a height line. What's a standard container? If it's danger, we use like tiger tape to say, okay, this is a hazardous area, or there's a trip hazard here. Again, it's not just it's looking at your total work environment. If there's trip hazards or stuff like that, you want to call these out so that everybody understands what's going on. And then you want to communicate using signboards. All right, when we talk about set in order, and I mentioned it earlier in a previous slide, and that's when you're talking about, what's good order. If you look at the things that you need to do your job on a daily basis, and then you use those things constantly, materials, whatever they may be, you want to place them as close as possible to where they're being used. If you use things occasionally a little further away, and if they're seldom used but still needed, you want to have it in a designated space kind of outside your immediate working area. If there's things that are not needed, and this is going through the sort process, helping in the sorting, is if there's no potential use, just get rid of it. If you don't think anybody else in your facility can use it, get rid of it. It just, as long as, caution I would throw is make sure it's still not on your books, whatever it might be. If it's potentially useful or valuable, I mentioned a red tag area. I'm not a stickler for whether you call a red tag area or not, but you designate an area in your facility that says, okay, here's something that I don't need, but maybe my neighbor needs it, or somebody else can use it. However, the key with that is that becomes a junk pile at some point in time. So you really need to have somebody that's watching it and making sure that like every 30 days that you're going through and saying, okay, this has been here. That's why they call it a red tag. You put a tag on it, it designates what time, what the date was that you put it there, and after 30 days nobody needs it, then you get rid of it. All right. At the same time, there's some stuff that you just can't throw away. There's a special requirement or disposal. So you just have to make sure that whatever you're discarding or getting rid of, that you're following the proper protocols in getting rid of that, and make sure you're doing the correct disposal on that. So again, things that you need on a regular basis, constantly every day, you want to have as close as possible. Things that you use occasionally, a little further away from your work environment and then seldom used, you want to have a designated area to keep that. Things that are not needed, if you know nobody needs it, it's old, get rid of it, dispose of it in the proper methods based on what that item might be. And then if you think it's useful, designate an area in your facility that, again, put a tag on it that says the date it was put there, and then you are at the monitor. Otherwise, it'll just become a clutter area where people are just putting things. So here's some examples of set and order that we've done and using visual controls to do that. So as you look at the top left, what we've done is we have identified where things are supposed to be. You can see the various tape that's on top of the workbench. And what we decided was anything that can basically grow legs and be picked up and moved, we want to put a location mark on our tabletops or our bench tops. So if you look at that, you can see an actual balance there. There's tape around it. Well, somebody, and we've seen this before, well, somebody will grab somebody's balance, move it to another bench, and never bring it back. So now with stuff I outlined and labeled, we know where things are supposed to go. You can look at the hand soap in the lower left-hand corner. Hand soap, water, DI water, everything's identified, everything's in that spot. Also with drawers, that tends to be the huge clutter point. What's in the drawer? So you organize your drawers in a way that are there. And on the outside of a drawer, you label what's in that drawer. So instead of trying to go through 30 drawers or going, you can look at the drawers, see what's in it, and if you need it, you can pull it out. Again, you're not searching and wasting time trying to find something. Everything's identified. The one thing I'd like to point out is if you look at the upper left-hand corner photograph, you will notice that there are some drawers that don't have anything labeled on. Part of our sustain and standardization is about every 6 months myself will go out and I will look at drawers that have no labels on, and when I open them up, they better be empty. If there's something in there, I'm going to go to that 5S lead in that area and say, okay, you need to take care of this. Right now, our 5S program is pretty much running itself. The product line managers and the leads in the areas are basically running the 5S and doing their audits, and we'll talk about that when we get to standardization and sustain. Again, more examples of visual controls. Again, the workbench. You look at the tape dispenser. I'm sure many times in your operation, you've had a tape dispenser and somebody takes it, moves it somewhere else, and you spend time trying to figure out where your tape dispensers are. Again, if you look at the cabinets, things are lined up and they're labeled. So if you're whatever flask, volumetric flask that you're looking for, you can easily find. They're not just thrown into the cabinets. They're organized in a way that makes it more efficient to find. The lower right hand, as I talked about, there's a drawer that's not labeled and there's nothing in the drawer. The lower left hand corner is an example of these are our vials and containers that we put product in. Again, we organize them so it's easy to find. You'll see the little blue tags there. They're actually on Kanban systems that when they hit a certain level, the Kanban cards turn into purchasing places the order. And I'll show an example of what the Kanban card looks like. But again, we never run out. We always are making sure that we have a safety stock and we're ordering based on the amount, the time it takes to replenish. We talked about height indicators. And these are things that the folks out, the employees out in our manufacturing environment, they came up with these ideas. So, we pack a lot of our products and we use styrofoam to pack them, so they come in huge boxes. Well, we don't want to keep the boxes out in the lab. What we want to do is we found an area to stack them. And if you look at the left-hand picture, you can actually see that there's a height level that we'll stack them to. And in the right-hand picture, it's when we need to replenish. There's a little red tape on the column that says, okay, when you reach this point, you need to replenish. Again, once you decide the best location for it, how do you outline it? How do you label it? And what are the replenishment points? More examples, again, of 5S. If you look at the upper left-hand corner, this is in our life science area, our TOC standards and calibrations. They have a packing station. Everything they need is right there to pack product. They have the boxes underneath. They have all the tapes. They have, any additional information, the fragile, everything is right there that they can grab. It's right at hand. Again, one of the things they came up with was from a packing station in that middle picture. is we pack stuff with bubble wrap and with foam. Uh, so instead of having it in boxes on the floor, we figured out a way to hang it from the ceiling and with a bar. So it's, again, it's right there at the packing station. Even our refrigerators, if you're looking for something in a refrigerator, we have, in this case, we have 5 shelf refrigerator, 2 sides. The blue tags are telling you exactly what's on each shelf and easy to find. The left hand, lower left hand is a example of a Kanban card. It's basically telling you the reorder point is when I get down to 1 case left, I'm going to reorder, and my reorder quantity is 2 cases. It tells you the item description, the catalog number, and who the vendor is. So again, the purchasing can just take this card, go in, create the purchase order, and generate a purchase order. Once the product comes in, purchasing will take out the boxes or the vials or jars, whatever it might be, back to the shelf that they're required on and replace the blue Kanban card in its placeholder. When we talked about location indicators, again, there's no cut and dry. It's whatever your facility decides to do. But you want to, as you mark things, you want to make sure that everybody understands the color codes. So if you look at this, our color code was a safety zone. So we're using tape that's green and white, represents safety zone. The black and yellow obviously is the hazard zone. Red is trash or scrap. So even our trash cans are actually marked on the floor, red or scrap. Blue represents easy to move. Yellow is aisles and walkways. Green's finished goods. I'm not going to read through all of them, but you get the picture. So the blue is easy to move. So I'm going to go back a couple slides, and you can see on the table up here in the left-hand corner, blue. All this stuff is easy to move and could go somewhere. Again, the same with our packing materials. Blue represents it's easy to move. Our tape dispenser. So as you look, red, or I think that might be orange. That's orange. That's our work in progress because I think that's what our, wow, look at me. I'm not even sure. Orange is, yeah, work in progress. I was right. So those flasks are needed, but they're going to be work in progress when we use them. So again, you want to set up your indicators, and these are the ones we set up for ERA. Again, when you outline, I can tell you, from my background, I worked with the Japanese an awful lot, and I can tell you that they were sticklers for outlining, even at a desk area. So if you're in your office or your desk area, they wanted everything identified with blue tape, whatever the color might be. They wanted everything there so that if I was on vacation or you're on vacation and somebody had to fill in, they knew exactly where to find things and where to put things back. So again, they're not wasting time searching, trying to figure out where things are. I can tell you, we don't go that far with our workstations. We do try to keep them organized. We do try to keep consistency and standardization. Our focus really is more on the manufacturing side. That anything that can grow legs and walk away, we want to keep identified where it's going. I can tell you from the Japanese point, they used to, if you laid your pen, I mean, this is how stickler they were. Depending on how you laid your pen on your desk or wherever it might be, they would ding you in their audits depending on how that pen was laying, because they've done a lot of studies on ergonomics, and so it's hard to show, but I'm just telling you, I don't go that crazy. To me, the most important thing is of 5S is making sure that you get things out of the area that you don't need, making sure you get it set in order, everything's identified and easy to find. So let's talk about shine. That's where you're keeping you're keeping everything in top condition, especially when somebody needs to use something that's ready to go, so it needs to be clean. So it's like our flasks, our volumetric flasks. You guys experience the same thing. Is when you're done using them, you got to make sure that you're cleaning them for the next time, next usage, and it could be somebody else that's using it. So again, it's the whole shine. We have procedures on cleaning our glassware. It's maintaining that. Also, when we're cleaning our glassware, we're inspecting. We're looking to see if there's any cracks in that glassware, chips or anything of that nature. So again, cleaning is really not just clean wiping up. It's also inspecting. It's inspecting whatever you're cleaning to make sure that everything's in top condition, that you find things that could be hazardous down the road or create delays in the process. Again, so it's more than just keeping everything spick and span. So again, when we clean an area, it's inevitable that we will also do some inspection of the machinery or equipment or the work conditions. You're also looking for trip hazards, trash. Sometimes people will leave boxes on the floor. Again, from a cleaning aspect, you're also thinking safety at the same time. Part of shine is kind of determining a schedule, setting up assignments, so to speak, putting a 5S schedule together, assigning some type of map of who's responsible for what areas, what are those responsibilities. But a schedule says, at the end of each day, or what are we cleaning? At the end of each week, what are we making sure we do to ensure cleanliness and operation of the facility? So part of setting up that schedule is understanding what needs to be cleaned in each areas, what supplies or equipment do you need to clean those areas, right? And every day, at the end of the day, there should be a 5-minute shine where you're wiping up, you're cleaning up your bench top, you're putting things away, you're making sure that whoever might be coming in after you or the following shift, or you're coming in the next day, that everything's ready to go, that you're not having to spend time the next day organizing things or cleaning up. And then setting standards for those procedures. People need to know what procedures to follow in order to use their time efficiently. So again, it's setting up that schedule, setting up those objectives, setting up those roles and responsibilities. Again, so here's an example of, this is our area outside our manufacturing area. On both sides, we actually have a cleaning kit. It's got a bucket for spills. It's got spray bottles. It's got everything. At the same time, even on our workbenches, we'll have designated cleaning supplies that are required. An example of a schedule is, again, this is not us. This is just an example that I've used in the past. I'll show you some other examples, but like for instance, the mail room. It talks about what's the frequency, how often does it need to be cleaned, weekly, the usage, what type of, what's the use, countertops, desktop cleaner, quick cleanup of dry spills, so vacuum, what are you using to do the cleaning? So again, the steps in the shine are determine the cleaning inspection targets, assign those targets, those activities, determine the inspection methods, what needs to be inspected, and then implement your cleaning inspection. And then if you find any issues with your equipment or glassware, whatever it might be, as you want to correct those problems. Standardize, right? Standardize. It's really maintaining those first 3 steps: sort, set, and order, shine. Why do we want to standardize? We want to make sure that we prevent, we don't fall back into bad habits, right? We want to make 5S a standard daily habit. And I can tell you we have that here. Now, I'm not going to say we're 100%, but there's a lot of people I can go out there, see at the end of the day, they're wiping down their bench tops, they're cleaning. So again, we want to make 5S a standard daily habit that everybody starts living and breathing it. I can tell you we started 5S about 4.5 years ago, and it probably took us a good 1.5 years to truly get to the level that we're at right now. And we still have room for improvement. All right. We don't want to return to old undesirable conditions. Don't want to start creating piles of unneeded items. We don't want disarray of tool, materials, raw materials, storage sites. I'm sure in every environment, your environment, there's been times where you had visitors, and you have to say, hey, we're having important visitors or customers coming in. We need to clean up our area. We don't, from a 5S standpoint, that's the last thing you want to have to do is send an all points bulletin out saying, hey, we're having VIPs coming to our facility. We need to make sure everything's spick and span. It should already be spick and span. You're not having to send those alerts out. Right? Human nature is hoarding. I'm just as guilty as everybody else. My wife tells me I'm the king of hoarders, and it's very difficult. You find, here's an example. You go to like Costco, and they got a special on, buy a box of brake fluid. You get 6-8 cans of brake fluid. Well, really, do I need 6 to 8 cans of brake fluid? I mean, how often am I going to be changing my brake fluid? So it's those types of things that you got to, even myself, I got to be remembering, just because it's a great deal doesn't mean it's going to take up space. I'll probably never use it, all of them. So if all he needs one can, then just buy one can. I can tell you, about a year and a half ago, I was doing an audit out in the lab. I went to one of the drawers and it said pens, and I opened up the drawer and swear to God, there had to be at least 120 pens of different sizes, different colors. I had to go to the person who owned that workbench, and ask them why they needed that many pens. Uh, and so we pared them down to a couple pens, and we put the rest of them back into our kind of central storage location. But it's just human nature. I'm a pen freak myself. I love pens, but at the same time, I got to control it really is a waste of space. It complicates things, and if you don't need 120 pens, then why have 120 pens? All right, part of the standardize again is determining who's responsible. We have different areas of our manufacturing environment, and we've identified what we call 5S leads that are responsible. It doesn't mean that they have to do everything. What it means is they make sure that the areas and the folks that are working in their areas are following the procedures and the guidelines of 5S. But who's responsible, and setting up map schedules, job cycle charts, and then integrate those into the regular work environment, uh, duties and activities. When you're done with something, clean it, put it away. Just don't let it sit. Uh, you're going to check on how well the 3S, again, sort, set in order, and shine is going on and being maintained in your area. Doing 5S checklists and audits. Doing a daily, weekly, monthly, every 6 month, quarterly scan, what I would call a Gemba walk around and check the areas. Using visual 5S. I'm a visual person. I like to see visual. I understand better when I see things. It allows me, by being a visual work area, will allow me as well as yourselves to be able to tell what's normal versus what's abnormal. If you walk out into a cluttered environment or work at a cluttered environment, you can't tell what's normal, what's abnormal. Again, that's key to 5S, is that visual aspect. 5-minute 5S splits. Many times, I've run into this. I've implemented 5S in at least 4 companies in my career. And the hardest thing is that 5 minute, because it's manufacturing. You get stuff, you have deliverables. You get stuff that you need to analyze. You got, customers that are waiting on things. And people will say, we don't have time, we don't have time. Well, I can tell you, if you do a sort and a set in order and shine, 5 minutes, whether it's 5 minutes a day or maybe it's 20 minutes a week, it saves you time in the long run. You don't have to send out those reminders of, hey, we got important VIPs coming to the facility. We need to spend an hour cleaning up. If you're doing your little 5-minute blitzes or 20-minute once a week blitzes, it actually saves you time in the long run. So I talked about action plans, what we do on a regular basis to standardize. One of the things is I'm very flexible because I want buy-in from the employees. And what I mean by that is I want them to support this. So we have a number of different 5S areas with the teams that work in those areas and a lead in each one of those areas. What I've done is the basics. I want the basics there, but they can determine how they want their board to look. Again, how they're going to do their action plans, and how they're going to do the audits. Everybody's using the same audit form, but how they want to post it is what makes them feel comfortable. So again, I allow them so they may be a little bit different. It may go against standardization, uh, but I look at buy-in is more important, and getting people involved and maintaining and sustaining. So if it works for them, it's going to work for me. It's going to work for that group themselves. So in the left hand photograph is one of our areas where they have audit information, and that's basically the audit schedule of who's going. And I apologize that you can't read it, but that audit information is when the audits are taking place and who's responsible for doing the audit. The action plan, what actions from the last audit were found, and the action plan has what is the issue that needs to be corrected, who's responsible for correcting it, And then on the other side, what's the status? So you can barely make out, you see these little black marks over here. It's actually a circle with it has quadrants within the circle. So if it's fully black, that means the thing's been completed. If it's half black, it means it's halfway done, etc. Again, here's the 5S schedule of who's responsible for what and how often it needs to be cleaned. Here's the last audit results that are over here, and then kind of a map of the area of the responsibility. Another area, they choose to put up their audit results, photographs of the audit results. So not only this group decided to write down what the issues were, this group is actually taking pictures of what they found and what needs to be corrected. Uh, their schedule sheet is right here. So all their 5S schedule is actually pulled out. They do it once a week. So whoever's doing it that particular week assigned to that duty will pull this sheet out, fill it out, and then turn it in. And again, so those are some examples of what we're doing out on the floor. Sustain. Again, hardest part is sustain it with anything is how do you sustain that culture? And I can tell you, you're making a habit of it. And really what it is, it starts with the leadership team itself of going out there and making it important to the folks that they understand that this is important. They'll see the benefits. Once you start implementing 5S, they will see the benefits. It will come along very quickly. However, if they're not seeing that is important to the leadership team, they'll start tailing off and reverting back to old habits. So how do we sustain? It's creating the awareness, right? It's doing the training. It's making the time and making the time not just for the people that are doing the 5S in the areas, but it's making the time to actually go out and audit and work with the teams out there. I was doing, when we first started, I was actually doing a quarterly, every quarter going out to the areas and then working with them individually as a team to show them, where the improvements need to be, what changes need to be made. It's creating that structure, right? It's creating that structure of how, when, the 5S activities are supposed to be implemented. Again, using your teams that are out there. From the management team, it's support, right? It's acknowledgement. It's providing resources that if they do need resources, it's providing the time to make sure that, hey, they can have 5 minutes or they can have 15 minutes at the end of the week. It's making sure those takes place, right? It's, and I can say that there is satisfaction and excitement. You create that satisfaction, you create that excitement. Am I going to tell you that it's easy? Everybody jumps on board? No. I mean, there's certain people struggle with this. They like what they were doing before, and they look at this as just added work to their environment. But after they get involved and truly start understanding that it is actually a benefit, it actually makes them more efficient and improves our quality, people will start coming around. Typically, if you never implemented 5S, it's going to probably take you a good year and a half just to get the basics down, and then you continually improve it from there, right? If there's supervisors, managers in the area, they have to be involved on a regular basis. I started off doing the audits myself, then I included the area managers in that process. Then I included the 5S lean leaders in the areas in that process, walking them through. And then the managers took over, and now it's the actual lean 5S leans. They're not just auditing their area, they're auditing other areas so that we get cross standardization in that process. Again, regular audits, providing that recognition and feedback. So here's an example of our audits. It's more than this, but this is what we're auditing for. And so if I go back to the previous slide, we talk about that recognition and feedback. We look and we reward, where are they? Red, yellow, green, or gold. And it's based on the actual points you get from your audit. And obviously we want everybody to get the gold. And gold is very few errors. But what we look at is we're looking at the 5S's in our audit process. We're looking at the sort process step. We're looking at the set and order step. And those are the two I'm showing, but there's also the shine, standardize, and sustain piece that is part of that process, right? So if I go out to an area or you go out to an area, you're looking at from the sort is, are you able to distinguish between what is needed and not needed? All right, are there unneeded tools, equipment, items present? All right, you may see them and you may think they're unneeded, but it's also just not going out, and you need to talk to the folks as well. They could have some flasks that are sitting on the workbench that don't look like they're being used, but it could be set up for the next job or the next product that they're manufacturing. So you need to ask the questions and you give the rating. So, in this case, as I go through it and do the sort, or whoever did this particular one, they identified points, 4, 4, 3, 4. The 3 is there. What they did is they put a comment below that said there was one item, a piece of equipment in a micro room, which Mike informed me was probably not needed anymore. All right. So if it's not needed anymore, then let's take a look at it and determine if it needs to go somewhere else or if we need to get rid of it. Set in order that you go through the same thing in the process. There's a total possibility of 183 points. In this particular audit, they got 118, which would have put them in red. So this is one of our earlier ones that we're showing an example of. Again, I'm not saying this is what you need to do, but you need to set up something like this. Uh, Something, again, for that sustain, that checklist, something that lets people know how well they're doing, where do they need to improve, those types of things. And lastly, when we talk about visual, what's interesting is people get strung out in the visual. I'm a huge Gary Larson's fan, The Far Side, and again, when we talk about 5S and visualizing and making sure everybody has a place and everything, we don't know to go to this extent of identifying everything, the cat, the dog, etc. But that's the presentation. Again, it was very high level. I could have talked for probably, typically, I can tell you my 5S presentation is about 100 and some slides. And it's usually a 3-hour process that we go through. We actually take people out and then start actually implementing some of the 5S. So at this point in time, if there's any questions, please feel free to ask. If there's no question, this webinar will be available for those that are interested uh, on our website at some point in time. An email, we'll answer them. I firmly believe 5S is probably one of the best tools that you can use from a lean aspect. Uh, One of my mentors told me a long time ago that if you did one thing well, 5S should be it. So I'm a firm believer in 5S. I think it makes a big difference, and we've already seen that difference here at ERA, and we're constantly improving it.